What's up, guys? Welcome back to Look Up, our Superman in review, and my first time watching the Christopher Reeve movies. My name is Kyle. Thanks for checking out Project Potter, guys. Go check out the other content, but if you haven't seen the first two episodes, what you guys will know is that I'm going to give my thoughts on this movie, Superman 3. I'm going to give a score out of 10, a favorite character, and we're going to rank this against the first two movies, guys. This movie is very different than the first two. I'll get into that, but appreciate you guys. Let's fly. I went full silly goose for this movie. It is a weird tone change. It is very unexpected. It is also not explained at all. And it's too bad because there's a lot of really cool ideas in this movie, but it feels like such a jumbled mess. And they committed to the silly tone. Now, I will say, as someone who is not very familiar with his work, Richard Pryor is basically like a Steve Harvey to me. He is a comedian who is just a comedian in a movie, and he is totally like outlandish and has crazy lines. He's like, "The boss? What does the boss want to see me? Me? Huh, maybe." I don't. And it's like, what are we doing here, guys? But the movie starts off with just a series of events that are so absolutely ridiculous, with this crazy title card sequence that is like kind of like the space ones where it comes in and it flashes in like it looks like done in Microsoft PowerPoint. Again, this was like 1983, guys, so it's understandable that it's not like the most impressive opening. But the credits or the titles like come through the cut right into the background, and I was like, this looks horrible. But there's just so many insane events. There's like a mime. He trips over a bunch of marbles. He falls over. People start clapping at a restaurant like they think it's part of the show. Like a phone booth falls over, but then it falls into the other two phone booths, and then like some guy is painting or whatever, and there's a guy that holds an umbrella up, and then he holds it down, and it spills on him, and then there's two women that walk by, and he puts it back down, and more of it spills on him, and I'm just like, there's so many insane events and like unbelievably crazy events that are just not explained, and I'm like, oh, they just went for it, dude. They were like, hey, remember the first two Superman movies were like kind of serious and like a little goofy, but also like mostly serious. They're like, you know what, dude? We're just gonna make this a comedy. And I'm like, it's too bad because you have stuff like later on, guys. You have the evil Superman, which is so cool. He's got the darker suit and he's got like a 5 o'clock shadow, and he's just basically like just like a horny dick. Like he's just like going to bars and like using his red laser eyes to like make like asses into the mirrors. And I was like, damn, Superman, like he's down bad. And people are like, yeah, no one's gonna trust this creep again, and he's just going around and just like fucking up ships, and then he goes back, guys, and when he turns good, he defeats his evil self, and he goes back and uses his like blowing power. That's what she said. Uses his blowing power to like blow the oil back into the ship, and then like push everything back together. It's like, okay, guys, like it's again, it's a Superman film. It's exaggerated, but there's like a lot of weird things in this movie. There's almost no Lois Lane. Lois Lane goes on vacation to Bermuda, and I forgot this was even the same movie because it happens at the beginning. And Clark is in the office in the Daily Planet, and man, Christopher Reeve is so good as Clark Kent. I actually think I like him more as Clark Kent than Superman, which is crazy because he's just like he just looks so iconic, and he's just like stumbling, but he's just like a goody two shoes, like good working, like a handsome dude, and I love his relationship with Lois. But like, hey, remember when he wiped Lois's mind? We don't get like any follow up with that because, and maybe this was contract negotiations or whatever. But Lois is like, I'm going on vacation, see ya. And then he's like, oh, okay. He's like, I'm also leaving now. And it's like, there's so many lines in this movie that I'm just like, didn't need that line. And they like tried to make something funny. I thought all of Richard Pryor stuff, like maybe Richard Pryor just isn't my cup of tea. And I could see what they were doing, but he was making so many like jokes, and where I felt like he was doing like a stand-up bit, and I'm like, what are you no one asked for this, like, no, this is not the time or place. And he ends up saving Superman at the end, but he like they try creating kryptonite, and that's cool, but he's like unknown. He's like, well, that means that it's not known. And I'm like, dude, is the audience like a bunch of 4-year-olds? Like, I don't understand what's going on here. But there's just so many crazy things. But the evil Superman versus like good Superman fight in the junkyard is awesome. It's really cool, dude. The way he like Dark Superman like wants to crush him, and they missed an opportunity here when Clark just comes out in like his suit and like strangles Dark Superman to death, I guess. And they missed an opportunity to like have him when he's crushing him in the car crusher to like the theme kick in, and boom, he's in his normal suit, and then he comes out and like kills or lasers evil Superman or whatever. But we're assuming that this was like him dealing with his inner conflict. but also that weird Kryptonian stuff that wasn't fully Kryptonian or kryptonite, like gave him, there's like a weird flash in his head, and then it like split into two, and it's like, okay, we got to do the evil versus good version, like the MCU staple there, MCU Phase One staple at least. And then I was like, okay, but it was really cool. It was cool to see, and I just loved how the Dark Superman was flying around, and he just was like super selfish. And they're like, oh, and he's like getting drunk at bars, and he's just like fucking with all the tequila, and I'm like, damn, dude, this is like Superman. It's basically like Homelander, right? And it's like if Homelander was in Superman 3, essentially, if that makes any sense. But I thought that was interesting. I thought Lana Lang, I think, who's basically Lois Lane, Lois Lane, guys, let's be honest. I thought she was great. I thought the stuff with Ricky in the field was cool. But again, like her being like, oh, where's Clark? And oh, Superman's just here. Didn't you see him? And oh, there's Clark. And it's clever the way they do it, I guess. But it's like these people can't figure it out. You know, it's just the thing with Superman, as always, guys. You see Clark in his glasses. You see Superman. They're the same height, the same weight. They look the same. Their hair is almost the same. And it's like, come on, man. You can't put two and two together. But yeah, there's just, it's weird not having Lex Luthor in this movie. They have some other guy, and then they are trying to, I guess, create some chemical. They have some ditzy blonde girl who's secretly super smart, and it's like, why are you hiding your intelligence? Because we see her like reading a really advanced like quantum book or whatever, and then she puts under the pillow, and then she like acts all ditzy, and it's like, is there a reason that you're not just being smart? Like I don't know. Maybe, I mean, maybe she's worried she'd be fired because she's not just like the pretty blonde like girl. But that was kind of weird. But then we have the ski scene, guys, where Richard Pryor, he's like, "Oh, didn't you see Superman? Yeah, Superman came in and he had his cape and he like pulls the tablecloth off and like intentionally kind of like breaks everything, and it's like another like, ah, it's supposed to be funny, but he like puts it around. He's like, yeah, Superman. I don't know how to ski, and then he goes off of a building, like a fucking 100-story building, and then I'm like, oh, and then as he's falling, he goes, la 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 la, and I'm like, dude, what are we doing? What the fuck are we doing in this movie? And then I'm like, oh, he's dead. But instead, he lands on the building and then skis down that. I'm like, oh, gotcha. And then he keeps going, and then he lands there, and then it's just like, dude, this is so outrageously goofy. And it's like, I had fun with this movie once I realized they were going fully goofy with it, and I was like laughing at certain parts, but like it's just a weird tone. It's weird for a third movie to completely change the tone with the same actors, or at least with Christopher Reeve, and then have like a dark third act. And it's like, this movie felt like was all the cutting room floor ideas that they just threw together, and they said, what about this, what about this? And when the general comes up and you think Gus is like a bad guy. First of all, the dude's just trying to get a paycheck. In the beginning, he's like, hey, why is my check like $140? It's supposed to be like $220. And they're like, oh, Social Security and this. And I'm like, I feel that, dude. I feel that. You know, you're taking all this money out of your taxes. But then he's like, oh, but actually, like, so they don't round up because there's like a little bit of your paycheck left over. And they're like, well, no one knows where it goes, but it's in the computer. And he's like, in the computer? Like, just hacks into their system. And it's like, again, it's 1983, but it's like, you got to admit that this would have been stamped. And I guess his boss immediately finds out. He's like, oh, you're a smart one. Because then he gets like an $18 million check. And then he's like, ooh, at his desk. And I'm like, okay, dude, Richard Pryor, what are we doing here, man? And then his boss calls him up and he's like, oh, you've been naughty, haven't you? And I was like, what is this movie, dude? And then he's like, ah, but you're smart. And then he's like, we need you to build a machine or something. Then they make the fake Kryptonian, which I thought was cool, although it looked insane. And then they give it to Superman, and then he's like, so. And then there's that scene where he calls his boss, whatever, and he's like, you had one job to kill Superman, and even that you couldn't do. That simple task. And I was like, simple task of killing Superman, dude. I was like, since when? Like, so it's just insane. And then it's like we never even find out what that unknown element is, or like what makes that element makes Superman split into two, or like whether that's his internal battle, or like I don't know. But it's weird that they made Superman like just kind of creepy, where he's like alone with Lana, and he's like, pretty girl like you is it's weird to find you alone. And I was like, whoa, Superman, you getting a little giving off rapey vibes here. We don't like a rapey Superman, okay? Definitely not. But it was interesting to see Christopher Reeve play a different version of Superman, because the first two, it's like so goody two shoes. It's like if we saw an evil Captain America, right? Or like, you know, spoilers, Deadpool, Wolverine, when we see Johnny Storm, and they're not the same character, but like imagine if we saw, I don't mean to make everything about the MCU, guys, but I love the MCU, so go check out Reviewers Assembled. But if we brought Cap back, right, and he was just kind of like a dick, and you're like, oh, but he's still Captain America. Like that's how evil Superman was. And again, the darker suit was really cool, but it was just interesting that she's like, oh yeah, the truck is hanging on the bridge, and he's like, ah yeah, I'll go in a little bit. He's like, I always get there on time, and she's like, but shouldn't you go now? He's like, nah, let's relax. And I was just like, oh, this is interesting, but kind of like creepy. But yeah, I thought not having Lois in there when Margot Kidder was so good in the first two, and then she's in the film, but she's in the very beginning, the very end, and then she's like, oh, it's like this is our new assistant, Lana, or whatever. And then Lana, and then she's like, oh, I like your shiner, and she's like, yeah, Clark gave it to me, and she's like, Clark gave it to you, and then she's like, oh, now you like Clark, huh? Why, as soon as he gives jewelry to another woman, that's when you suddenly see Clark as more than just a coworker, huh? I see what you're doing here. I see what you're doing here, Lois. But yeah, I mean, this movie, an absolute mess, really, from start to finish. It's just super goofy, and it's one of those like almost so bad that it's good movies where, like, I could watch this again now knowing what it is, but I think if we had Lex Luthor instead, it would have been better because like this random guy, I'm like, I don't care about this guy at all. I don't even understand what his plan is. He's trying to build a machine, and then guys, I can't believe I almost forgot this. They build a machine, and then Gus, who's Richard Pryor, Gus just goes, it wants to be alive. And I was like, what? And then it just absorbs some woman. And I was like, oh, okay. And then like these wires start going over, and then it turns her into a robot. And I was like, oh, that's what we're doing with this movie. I see. And then she comes out, and I was like, this movie is fucking insane. This is absolutely absurd movie. There's so many things I feel like I'm forgetting, but I was just like, wow, I can't believe that line was in there, and that so many Richard Pryor's things. I mean, dude, the thing when he's like, when he gets in, he has to do the two key cards at once, and this guy Brad, that just keeps showing up, who's like clearly trying to bang Lana. Lana, I hope that's her name. I forget if that's her name or not, but Brad just keeps showing up, dude. This guy that looks like the guy from Narcos, and I was like, bro, I feel like I was watching like a Kenny Powers episode or something because I was like, why is this dude here again? And the bowling scene was actually cool where Superman's like, actually, I don't think little Ricky needs your help. And he's like, well, he's not doing so good. And he's like, I think he'll do just fine. He's like, I don't think you want to give him a lesson in front of the other kids. And then he's gonna like throw like another gutter, and then Superman blows. He like intentionally falls into like the chalk or whatever, and then pretends to sneeze and blows, and he gets a strike, and it's a really cute scene actually. And I was like, okay. But this fucking guy Brad just keeps showing up, dude. And I was like, what are you doing here, dude? Like he shows up at the end, and when he's like on his knees trying to pick, oh, little Ricky knocks over like the supper or whatever. And I was like, why are you zooming in on the plate falling? And then he's like, oh, it's okay, I'll get it. And then that's when he just walks into like the front door, or like he's like going into the apartment. And I'm like, dude, this guy is stalking you. Like, go call the police. Like, I don't know what's going on here, but there's just a lot of like really weird story elements here, and it's messy, and it's so goofy, and like I said, there's so many like just weird things, and I kind of had fun with this movie, but I can't objectively say it's a good movie. Like it's not a good movie. I think I had fun with it, and maybe Superman 3 is beloved amongst the Superman 3 community, the Superman community. I would love to see what people think of this movie, but it's a great time, I think, when you know what you're getting into. But as someone who's going in like understanding that Superman is goofy, it's not going to be like the Batman, like super dark and brooding. Like Superman is just kind of a goofier character, and the first two movies are kind of goofy, but they had elements of goofy around kind of a serious plot point to some extent. And I love like the Smallville stuff and Superman going back to Smallville, and that was all really cool. And even the fake kryptonite stuff was cool. But you give me a just over the top goofy movie, and I'm like, bro, I need some serious Superman. And now again, this is me watching in 2025, loving the MCU. We've gotten Endgame and all these great things, and like it's a different world than it was in 1983, right? But the first two Superman movies weren't very goofy, so they took a huge risk by being like, let's make it super silly. And it's like, I don't know if we should do that. But then they have elements in there that are cool action scenes, and Superman like getting drunk and being dark, and basically being like, I'm not saving anyone, dude. I'm just gonna be like a dick and grow a 5 o'clock shadow and stuff. And I thought that was really interesting. But they just kind of threw that in there for a half hour, if that. And then he just has to fight himself and clears demons. But it's interesting. He's like a man eater, basically, or not a man eater, but he's like a womanizer, where he goes and like sleeps with the blonde girl, and she's like, "Hey, honey." He's like, "That wasn't me." He's like, "Nah, I was drunk last night, dude. Don't. That wasn't me, bro. That was a one night stand, and you know it." But yeah, just a lot of weird elements in this movie, and even though I had a good time, again, it's not a good movie. Okay, guys, my favorite character for this one is going to be Christopher Reeve again. He is just so good, man. He's so good, and the suit is amazing as well. And I love how this was probably the biggest range we've seen from him so far, where he was always great as Clark and Superman, right, in the first two films. But in this movie, we get to see him deal with a different woman other than Lois, and it did feel very Lois Lane-esque with this woman. It almost felt like they were trying to like recreate Lois and Clark, and I was like, that's kind of their thing. And at times I was like, where's Lois? Like this, it feels like you're like cheating on her, even though they weren't together technically. But I was like, you get normal Superman, you get him going home to Smallville, you get him getting like his award, his recognition. Then you get evil Superman, which is awesome. Then you get Clark Kent's performance. Like there's a lot going on here. And I think Christopher Reeve is just so good in all of it. And it's like, man, this man was really a force. Like he is an icon. He is Superman, dude. And that's what makes his accident even like more tragic. And I know he probably spoke about it and it was inspiring and all that stuff, but it's really hard knowing that like, especially like and this is an in real life thing, like an IRL thing, guys, but like he got paralyzed. The man who played Superman, who could fly, got paralyzed is crazy. But you know, watching these movies now, it's I'm just taking them for what they are. And I gotta say, guys, the flying in this movie was a lot better. It still looks a little crazy, but it was much smoother. I feel like they finally kind of figured out how to make it look okay when he's flying through. And I thought it was like it wasn't like wiggling around. It was just like a nice smooth line. So I thought they finally fixed the flying. I didn't mention too like the chemical plant scene or whatever, where he goes and they're like, "Oh, we're out of water," and it's really smart because he goes to the lake, freezes it, takes like a big ice block, comes back and throws it in, it melts, and then it kind of just stops Chernobyl from happening, basically. And so there's some cool stuff in here for sure. It's just, again, it's silly, but I thought Christopher Reeve, once again, phenomenal, iconic as Clark Kent and Superman and evil Superman. He did a great job, and he was my favorite character for this one. Hey, guys, that brings us to the score. This is a 6.5. I don't feel comfortable putting any higher than that because objectively, it's just not a good movie. Now, again, would I have more fun rewatching it knowing that it's super goofy? Yeah. I mean, did some things make me laugh out loud? Yeah, because they were so ridiculous. But I was laughing kind of at how insane they were, not like, oh, that was a funny joke. More like, wow, I can't believe I just watched that. Like, just everything going on. Like I said, the opening where the phone booths all throw down, and then it's like, whoop! It's like everyone's like, oh, the paint slips, and then the umbrella's up, and then it's down, and then the mime slips on the marbles, and everyone's clapping, and then like just the skis going down and skiing down a building, and like they took all of the slapstick comedy and went full throttle on it, and it's like it was just a really weird choice, and it's almost like they made this really goofy movie, and then they were like, oh, we have to put some cool action in it and some like, you know, some sort of like serious nature in it. And that's when you get like Superman dying from the kryptonite machine, but then they get goofy again with it where they're like, oh, the machine it wants to be alive. And I'm like, what does that mean? And it sucks like all of the power out of the US, and then it literally sucks people in, and Superman's like, oh, how did you defeat it? And he's like, well, your machine's pretty good. But he's like, I put acid down, and then the acid flew at the machine. It looked like they were just throwing like spaghetti sauce, like some marinara sauce, dude. And I was like, this looks insane. But Superman, after getting sucked like into a computer and getting wires on his face and stuff, like he's just good. And even though the machine exploded, he was in there. He's just good. And then he flies Richard Pryor home, and he goes, whoa, 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 and I'm like, oh my god, who directed this film, and why did you keep those lines in, and why, like, they just did not care about the tone of this movie, and it's really too bad because it could have been a really cool movie if Superman was struggling with, oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I being a good Superman? And then he like gets that stuff, and then he has to fight Dark Superman. Or we should have had a Superman good suit versus Superman dark suit. I know that again, it's 1983. They probably couldn't figure that out. That's what had of Clark in like his shirt and tie. But it was still an awesome fight. There are still some really cool elements in this film, and like even the like recreating kryptonite and using the satellite that they found Krypton's debris, and then they got the satellite, and there's this unknown element, and that's really cool. It's like, what is that? And there's stuff I really enjoyed in this film. And even the Smallville stuff, and going back to Smallville and how they're like, oh, Superman's in Metropolis. He's not going to be in Smallville. And obviously it's Clark. But just seeing the difference between like the fields and then the city is really cool. And how the public like perceives Superman. And they're like, yo, where's Superman at? Like, where's Superman? And it's cool. And again, it's Christopher Reeve, iconic, amazing performance. I think he's been great. But this is objectively a bad movie. Even if you love this movie, I think you can't sit here with a straight face and say this is a good movie. So that's why it's getting the score that it's getting. Okay, guys, so the rankings here. Number 1, we have Superman 2. Number 2, we have Superman, the original movie or the movies, 1978. And then Superman 3 at number 3. And again, this is a weird one because I did enjoy this movie upon reflection. I enjoyed talking about it because it's so insane. I'm sure I've forgotten a million insane scenes. But it's not a good movie. So I can't sit here and be like, oh, this was fun. So 8-1. Like, I can't do that because it's not an 8-1. It's a bad movie with horrendous lines, and it was again so bad that it was good. And it's probably maybe people's favorite or people hate it. I can see it going either way. But for our rankings, ranking the Superman movies as a movie overall and what it means to like Superman and rewatchability and movie quality and all that stuff. Despite this being the latest one, I think this is the weakest one, and so it goes at number 3 in the rankings. Okay, guys, well, that's another episode of Look Up or Superman in Review. So we are on to Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Now, guys, is The Quest for Peace going to be a goofy adventure? Are we just going to be goofy forever now? I don't know, but I think this is the last Christopher Reeve movie coming up, so I'm going to be sad about that. But then for Superman Returns, which is a 2006 movie, I think it's Brandon Routh plays Superman. So that's interesting to see someone else there. And then we're on to the Henry Cavill, Man of Steel, and then Batman v Superman before we go into the new James Gunn. So I'm not going to do Justice League and all that. I thought about it, but those aren't really Superman movies. Even Batman v Superman is kind of a stretch, but I feel like that's Henry Cavill as Superman. That's important. Justice League, he's part of a group, and there's that in the Snyder Cut. And I thought about maybe doing both, but that's just a lot of bad movie to watch. And so I was like, nope, we're gonna stick to the schedule that we set. So guys, up next is Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Will we find peace? We're certainly going to find out. But guys, I appreciate you. Thanks for checking out the content. Like, comment, subscribe if you did like it. Until next time, guys. Look up.